Hi, and welcome to this week's SV Lynx video. Well, Phil and Brian are busy working at the build site all this week, epoxying the port canoe inboard side and working on the MDF frame for the Forebeam. So while they're doing that, I'm going to be working with Schionning on some weight distribution, but we will get to the results of that in next week's video.
Not raining today, but it did mist a little bit. As you can see, there's a little bit of moisture on the table here. And so we don't really want to start epoxying the hulls again right now, simply because we want that to dry off before we bother with that. But we're not going to waste these couple hours while we wait for that to dry. So we're going to start building the Strongback that we need to build the Forebeam over here, because we're going to run out of work that we can do on that hull before the Cyclamen arrives from South Africa. So we know we're going to have to work on this Forebeam before then, so we might as well work on that right now while it's a little bit damp over there. And so once that dampness is gone, we can go back to epoxying the planks, but until then we'll build the Strongback. So we decided to go ahead and use these two pads, although these pads are built to hold the port hull eventually. But since the port hull can't be finished until the Cyclamen arrives, we can build the Forebeam here. Then, when the Cyclamen arrives, finish the Forebeam, move it away, and flip the port hull over here after it gets finished. So these two cement pads, which are perfectly level, make a good platform for us to build our Strongback on to construct the Forebeam, since we don't really need them until later for the port hull. So we're using 2x6s by 12s here, and we're going to create a frame, and then we'll put the various pieces across the frame, so they'll be sitting like this on the frame. We don't even need to use plywood on top of here, because this is so narrow between these, so we'll just put them on top of the 2x6s. So we have a few 2x6s, are 12 foot in length, but that's not long enough. We need 27 feet, and so Brian's currently joining together right on the cement so that the joints is better.
So we started out today getting lumber for the support for our Forebeam Strongback. Then we went and did a couple of slats of our hull. Got a little warm, so we came back here and finished up on the platform.
Unfortunately, all of the MDF is all cut to the same tolerance, so that means that we're having to route out all of the ones for the Forebeam, and we're going to have to route out all of the ones for the cabin top later. But it saves a lot of time of hammering and possibly breaking them, so it's worth the time to do it. These are the top pieces that go across the arch, and we're going to put those on right now. All right, so we're going to put the arch across here now. And get this thing to line up. as you can see, we broke a couple of these, and we were trying not to. So what we learned was, on this one, is that we have to put the top in first and then on down, and try not to get the bottom part in until we've got the top further in. And the reason is that these ones are angled and it puts pressure on them and it snaps them at these weak spots right here. Well, fortunately, we checked the level and the entire thing is level. So these particular 2x6s had to have been very good pieces of wood, because it's level everywhere already. So we don't have to shim it or anything, it's ready to go. So we just fixed up a couple of these breaks that we did when we were hammering together where the weak spots are on the MDF that broke. We just put some braces in to put those back together. So now we're just connecting the pieces together, and this thing's ready to go for strip planking. We've still been working on this Forebeam Strongback, and we've now got it tacked down everywhere so it's not sliding off of these 2x6s, and they're all attached at the joint spots here. So it's not going anywhere at this point, and it's all, we've checked it again and again, it's all very level. So it's ready to build the Forebeam on there, which we're not going to start today, but at least we've got the Strongback ready to go on that. So it doesn't look like we're going to get much epoxy work done today. This has taken much of the day, more so than I thought, but that's the way it goes in these things. So we'll get back to epoxy in the morning. Hey, it's another day, and we're here working on epoxying in more planks on our port canoe. And also we did clean up the front a little bit now. It's still not right, and that's because this gets cut back quite a bit back here, and so we're just getting it straightened up a little bit and more of the curvature in line there. So we just added a 2x4 here that we can start screwing into to pull those down into the right shape there, and it's beveled at the top so that it matches in there. So I mentioned the other day that we messed up some of the biscuits because we left the peel ply. You can see with that little red stripe there on this top, and therefore of course the epoxy won't stick to it. So we're having to recut in some of these biscuits. And yes, I know it's a rookie mistake leaving the peel ply on top of here, but we're rookies. So, you know, we learn from the mistakes and such, and it's really hard to tell when the peel ply is on and when it isn't. This one's no peel ply, this one is with peel ply. So it's just an oversight that we didn't peel that side, and we're gonna not waste too much time in fixing these, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna fix a biscuit while one of the strip planks is setting up on the hull, and then we'll go back and do another strip, and while it's setting up we'll do another biscuit. We've got about 5 more of those to fix, so not too big a deal, but learn from your mistakes. That's what we do, at least we try to. So here's our biscuit, and we're just going to cut the new biscuit in here. So over here Brian is cutting it, and we just measure out how long the plank was, and we'll just put in a new biscuit, which we'll show you in just a moment. Here I'm marking the 2 cut pieces where we're going to have to route out the foam, and then we can stick that biscuit that's just above there. So I'm marking where the biscuit fits in so that I can get out the Dremel, and then we can start routing. And use that line, take out the foam. Our biscuit just inserts right in like that. I usually get a really tight fit there. I might have to clean that up a little bit more. That side's not too bad. So now we got a clean joint here. So now I'll work on this side. So there we have it. All set and ready to be glassed back in again. So we epoxy both sides, the insert and the biscuit. And slide them in. All right, since we're going over these biscuit repairs that we did, I just thought I'd show you. This is what the repaired biscuit comes in looking like now. So it's now very smooth across, and obviously epoxied in properly as well. These are some of the things you learn when this is the first hole you've ever strip planked, and you have to experiment a little bit and find out and make a few mistakes, fix them, and continue on. Now, some of you on the comments were worried about if rain came and what we would do about this MDF being out in the rain. And we are in April still, and it's still possible to get April showers here in Southern California. They don't usually last, they're not usually big storms, but you know, we can get them occasionally. And when that's the case, that's what this plastic you see here on the ground is. We'll just cover the MDF areas, the hull and the forebeam over there and the hull. We'll just cover them completely with plastic, and that'll do it for the day or two if we might get rain. And there might be a little bit, it's a 50% chance on this coming Thursday, so we'll just cover it all, no big deal. All right, another plank, number 18, and that means we're waiting for it to set up. So we're gonna go over and do one of our repairs so we won't waste time.
So we got some good news from South Africa. The Cyclamen that we've been waiting for has been loaded into the container, onto the ship, and is on its way here.
Well, that's good news because we still got probably a week or two to finish up the epoxy on that porthole. Then we've got to sand the whole porthole. I'll get it right yet. And we also have to fix the bow, which takes some special work where we have to use a special form that we create to create a needle or blade sharp front of the boat, as sharp as possible. That'll slice through the water nicely. So there's quite a bit of work there to go. And we do have that forebeam that we set up the forms, and we can work on that. So we're not going to get held up much anymore by this. So this is really good news that it's actually on the cargo ship and on the way here. So we thought we'd share that with you today. Cheers. We're taking a break from epoxy right now. Okay. Sometimes we screw in a block with 2 screws to hold these tips to stick out, but occasionally, like in this case, we could just pick a piece of plastic so that the epoxy doesn't stick, and then just take a clamp and pull that tip into the shape of the hole right here. That gets it aligned with the strip above. However, that doesn't necessarily give it enough pressure to push up. So what we do then is we can take a plank and just kick it in there and shove it up just a little bit more so that it's a tight fit, and get that epoxy to squeeze out as necessary. Just like that. Then it's just a matter of cleaning up all the squeezed out epoxy on the top and the bottom, so we'll speed that up for you. Here's another one of those learn as you go moments. As we clean up the epoxy that squirts out, we found that not only do we have to scrape it off and such, but we really should take a rag at the very end and just clean up. And we didn't do that on some of the other ones, and you can see sort of some mess there, which just means more sanding. But we'll learn in the next half of this hull, and for the entire starboard hull, we will wipe it first. All right, we're back at it on Saturday, and as you can see, we've got the next strip on, and we just finished cleaning up, so we'll move on to number 20. Here we go. Hey everyone, this is Rebecca. She's a great friend of Brian and I. We go mountain biking all the time, and she dropped by today to give us a hand, so we put her to work. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, well, now that the epoxy is dry here, we want to take out all of these screws because we want to fill those with epoxy. And the other thing too is that they can reuse these screws and these little washers here that they could use. So that's what we're going to be doing next. And we're going to save those as we pick them up off the floor. apparently I asked them, how long does it take for the epoxy to dry? And one of the things they said to me was too long. So that's one of the things that they wish would work a little faster, is this epoxy. Brian, how are you?
Hi, good.
Okay, before we wrap up this week's video, I'm going to turn it over to Phil, and he's going to answer some of your comments and questions from last week's video. And we have a new segment that we're going to introduce.
All right, as the Admiral just mentioned, I'm going to take a few of the comments and answer them. I've answered them online as well, of course, but I thought I'd do a little bit on video. I can talk a little deeper into a couple of the answers. So let's take a look at a few and discuss a couple of things people are saying. So Leon says, every single one of those tapered end cut pieces is going to come in very handy when you're nearing the end of the build. They're great for an incredible number of jobs and will help cut costs. Well, that's true. And we already have a possible use for some of those really small cut-off pieces. Instead of just throwing them out, we're planning on keeping them, and we're considering using a laser engraver and engraving our logo onto some nice rounded pieces of the boat, and then giving them out to our patrons as a kind of key float. Since they are foam and they will float, and they'll have our logo on there, and you'll own a piece of the boat. So that's just one idea that we had, and it's good news. After we had that idea, nothing to do with it, an engraver company contacted me after seeing our videos and has offered to give me an engraver. So that's pretty nice of them. So we're going to go ahead and get that. Of course, they asked us to put something on the video about it, so there will be a little plug for them in there after we test it. But they didn't tell us that we can give our honest opinion. So we'll try it out and we'll tell you how that thing works and if we really like it or not. But at least it's possible that we can engrave those pieces for people. So let's take a look at another one. Pops GG, he said, thank you so much for documenting this so well. Well, we appreciate your comment there. And then he says, after watching most of your videos leading up to this, I was strongly considering doing a kit catamaran like you. Now I'm 100% sure that I will not be doing this. Good luck. Well, the thing is that it is a lot of work. And we knew that going in. But I want to say a few things about how much work it is. Nothing we're doing in any one instance of work is really all that difficult so far. Cutting some foam with a saw or gluing some epoxy on, it's the same job over and over again in a lot of cases. And it's a huge project building something this big. But that's not the way that we look at it. I learned this from writing novels, in that if you try to keep the entire novel and all the complexities of not just a novel, but I write multi-book series. If you try to keep that all in your head at once, it's an impossible task. People ask me after reading my books, how did you keep that all in your head? And the simple answer is, I don't. I write 5 to 10 pages every single day, and I just keep doing it. And the thing is if you write to 5 to 10 pages every single day, in just a couple of months, you'll have a novel, and in 3 or 4, you'll have a series. It's not that difficult if you just attack it as in, I'm just going to know what I'm going to do today and try to achieve that small goal. And tomorrow, I'll have a new goal, and I'll try to achieve that. And if you do that every single day, I'm assuming it'll work like the book, and eventually I'll have a full catamaran sitting there, however long that may take. But at least it will get done, and not any one day is all that difficult. So if you are considering it, don't let me scare you away by seeing how much work it looks like. It's just one day at a time, and you'll get your boat. Gone Silent says, the planking is going much faster than I would have guessed. You're making your first build look easy. Well, it isn't easy. As I just mentioned in the previous one, it's not that difficult either. But what I meant by it's not easy is we're rookies, we're new, and we're making plenty of little mistakes right now. And of course, we have to fix those mistakes. But the good news is, once you've made the mistake and you figure out what it is, you don't make that mistake again, and you move on. And since this is a lot of repetitious work, again, working with foam and epoxy, once you learn certain techniques with it, you'll stop making those same mistakes and make some all new ones. But mostly it'll get smoother and smoother. And we're already finding that even on just this first, inside of the port canoe only, and we're already learning what we're going to do on the outside of it better, and of course on the entire starboard hull when we get to it. So it's a learning process, and it isn't easy at the start, but it gets easier as you go. Carl Hill says, I know it's just another clump on an increasingly large pile of wheat to be chafed out. Adding shorts to your channel could help with the algorithmic servitude. So we agree that if we would add shorts, it would probably benefit our channel some. And it is something that we will consider doing in the near future. But really, my problem is I'm swamped. And making these videos takes 20, 30 hours a week at times to do that, between the filming and the editing. And of course, I'm building a boat, and we're doing that full time as well. And so I'm stretched pretty thin right now. I get about, don't take this as a complaint. I signed up for this, so it's fine. But I get about 5 hours of sleep each night. And the rest of the time, I'm up in the mornings working with Schionning, working with the Admiral on what she's going to be doing and what I'm going to be doing, going to the build site and working with Brian and some of our other crew volunteers. And then I come home and I start uploading the dailies and editing those. And by the time I get to sleep, I get to start it all over the next day. And again, not a complaint. This is what I signed up for. But adding more things in is a lot for a plate that's already pretty full. But we'll see. Crazy G74 says, have you thought about or looked into getting an epoxy dispensing and or mixing machine? Yes, we have looked into that. In fact, quite a bit. And I almost ordered a epoxy dispensing machine, which actually mixes it as it comes out so that you don't have to stir or anything. And it was about $1,300 for it. And I thought maybe it'll even save us a little money, since we might not waste quite as much epoxy, because the problem is sometimes you don't know how much to mix for a job. So you don't want to run short, so you mix a little extra. And then that extra goes to waste. And epoxy is expensive stuff. We spent, the total cost for this boat for the epoxy is something like $25,000. So, wasting epoxy is a bad idea. So I thought maybe I'd spend $1,300 and get a machine that would help us dispense it out. And if we needed a little more, we could just go back to the machine and it would squirt out a little bit more for us. The reason we didn't do that is because we decided to test a little bit by hand mixing first and find out if we really needed the machine. And what we discovered is although the epoxy would be mixed by the machine, it would not be mixing in all of the different fillers that we add to it, the silicas, the microballoons, the microfibers. These come and you have to mix them to exact amounts, sometimes by weight, sometimes by consistency. And that's got to be hand stirred in. So in the end, you're going to have to hand stir and mix this stuff no matter what is dispensing the actual epoxy. And so we just finally decided, we'll just save the $1,300 and we're just going to end up hand mixing that stuff. Let's see, what else do we have here? Jacob Munchfall says, looks tough squeezing the Ziploc bag with epoxy. High risk of gaining a tennis elbow. From experience, may I recommend that you use a DeWalt electric caulking gun that handles bags? We considered that, and after your comment, we even looked into it some. It's just that I just think it's going to add a complexity, because now we're going to have to mix into a container, and then we're going to have to get it into the right little sausage bag to fit into that caulking gun. And then once we've squirted it out, we're going to have to get either a new nozzle and attach that to the caulking gun. And I think it's just going to add time and complexity to it. We're really not having a problem pouring it into the Ziploc bag, snipping a corner and getting to work. And as soon as we're done with that Ziploc bag, and we just toss it. So there's no cleanup on it. So right now, I don't really feel that we need to do that. I'm not getting tennis elbow. It's really not that hard. The epoxy comes out with hardly any pressure at all, so it's easy enough. So we're going to stick with the simple version of doing things for now. Who knows? I can change my mind in the future, but right now, that's what our plan is. And let's see, what else do we have? Healyhead said, something I've seen in the past when dealing with loss of strips was during dry fitting. When the strips were in place, the person not only numbered the strips, but also ran a diagonal line on one side and 2 diagonal parallels on the other. They quickly let the final assembly team know if a mistake was made. We agree, and that's actually something we thought about for doing for the next starboard hull, is that we're just going to draw a line. We're still going to number them so we make sure we keep them in the right order, but we're going to draw a line down the entire thing. And what that really will do for us is allow us to line each piece back up precisely as we're getting it back on. Now, generally this still works fine because the screw holes have to line up that we have, and so it's not really that hard to line them up. But having that line drawn would just be one more indicator that we've got that thing in perfect place before we screw it in. So that is something we plan to do in the future one, and we even planned before that comment, but you're thinking the same way we were on that, and so we do appreciate the comment. All right, well, that about wraps up the comments for today. Answers to them anyway. There were many more, but that's enough for the moment. However, we do have one more comment that is going to lead us to a new segment that we're going to do into the future. So let me read that last one. Kirk B. He wrote, would be cool if maybe once a month or once a quarter you did a summary segment in your video of the total labor hours you've spent so far, so you can accurately understand how much time you have to judge the process versus the estimated 6,000 hours that they say the kit takes to complete. All right, well, let's first of all, thanks, Kirk, for posting that suggestion, and we are going to take your suggestion. But I do want to say one thing about what you ended there. Yes, Schionning says it takes 6,000 hours to construct the shell of this boat, but that's really for professional builders. And from the beginning, we've said that it's going to take us amateurs probably something more like 10,000 hours instead of 6,000. So we're not really shooting for 6,000 hours. However, I still like to track exactly how many hours that we've spent and get an idea of, was our estimate of 10,000 hours in the ballpark or what? And so we're going to add a thing once a month at the end of one of our videos. We're going to go over how many hours we spent that month on the project, and that will give us a projection of how much we'll spend over the entire thing. Of course, we'll actually, if we keep it up, we'll get a real total by the end of the actual hours we spent, but you guys can all follow along. And for the competition we ran on how long it's going to take, this will give an indicator of how close we are to being on track or not. If we're on the right curve to reach that 10,000 hours when we finish, then maybe we'll finish on time. Of course, just because we're tracking the hours doesn't tell us really how long it's going to take. But still, we'll find out just how many hours it took to build this boat for an amateur set of builders. And we'll track not only Brian's hours and my hours or the Admiral's hours, but any of the people who come of our crew and help for a day or two here and there. And we'll track all of it. And let's take a look at the end of April right now. All right, so here we are at the SV Lynx crew hours, and it's just a sheet it will have, and once a week I will update the sheet. And as you can see, this is the week of 4/17 through 4/23, and it tracks what days, who worked, how many hours they put in, and then down at the bottom it gives us a total. And if I go to this week, for example. All right, so here we are at 5/1. Today is 5/4 that I'm recording this particular thing. And so yesterday Brian and I each put in 8 hours, so I can add those in here. And today, we didn't work any hours. We decided that we were going to take today off because we're only working 5 days a week is our plan. And we've been working 6, but all along our plan is to work a regular schedule of 5 days a week. So we're taking Sundays off every week, and we're working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday and Saturday. And the reason we chose that schedule was we have certain people who are helping us of crew who work regular schedules, and they can only help on a weekend. So we want to make sure that at least one of the weekend days is available for them to come and help. So that's where we're at on this week. But if we flip over to the second tab here of yearly totals, it will then track how many hours we are taking on the entire project. So this is when we start here on April 10th is when we started working on the boat. And there's the first 3 weeks of April and a partial week of May right here. And it'll continue on. And when you get over here to April in 2025, you can see it turns blue because this is when we hope to end. But we do have this contingency time that we've already put in there all the way to December of 2025. And this is there in case we have to go into it if our estimates were wrong. But we're hoping to finish exactly in 2 years, which would put us right at around April 10th. So that's why that's tracking there. And just a quick calculation I did over here for April shows that these are just how many hours that we worked and an average amount of hours. And then I put in all the crew parts and averaged that out. And if we worked exactly this many hours with the crew help we've had so far, it would take 10,282 hours of work to finish. Pretty damn close to our estimate. And in that time, Brian and I would put in 8,480 of those hours. So that's where we are in April for the projection forward. But the average hour, the amount of hours we spend in April is 291. So that's where we stand, and we'll see what happens at the end of May and see how if we're still on track. Right now, we are on track to spend that many hours over the next 2 years is basically what that's saying. And whether the boat will be finished then is a different question, but that's how many hours we will work over the next 2 years if we stay on this pace, and that's exactly the pace that we meant to be on. So we're on track for now. All right, well, that's our conclusion for our segment on how much time we spent in April, and at the end of May, we'll show you what we did in May. So let's move on to our next thing. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed all of the answers to your comments and such, and our new segment where we go over how many hours we spent each week, and so that we can get an idea, of course, for how long the entire project is going to take. So again, thank you all for watching, and thanks to our patrons for their very, very generous contributions to the project. And that about wraps it up for this week.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
We do have a video for next week that we've already been working on a little bit, including a disaster, but I don't want to kind of let things go too early here. So we'll show you what happened next week. We'll see you then. All right, bye.
Bye.